Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. Thank you all for joining. This is obviously a somewhat different session than the others you've attended. Think of it like the sorbet between courses at a meal. You know, it's related, but it's different because this is about social investing. I'm Danny Grossman. I'm privileged to be the CEO of the Jewish Community Federation and Endowment Fund for San Francisco, the Peninsula, Marin, and Sonoma. Prior to that, I founded a couple of companies, not in tech, but in toys. Someone has to do it. Just think about it. And food. And prior to that, I was a diplomat for a while. And I'm really pleased to have next to me Harry Saal, who's one of the giants in our community, both for his professional pursuits as well as his activities in the community, civically and philanthropically. He's modest, as you can see. He's currently the chairman of Retrotope, as you see up there. He's the founder, and he was the founder and CEO of Network General Corporation, which was the first company, as many of you know, wholly dedicated to network diagnostics, very active in philanthropy and civic affairs. As I mentioned, he's won numerous awards. Let me mention a couple of them. Ernst & Young Software Entrepreneur of the Year, the Silicon Valley Community Federation's Corporate Community Involvement Award, as well as an award that we gave him just this year for his civic involvement. So thank you for joining. And let's jump right in. I'll ask him a few questions, and then we'll look for some from yours. So I know you've lived in Israel in the past, and I know you have a strong connection there. Would you talk about your current connection to Israeli business and civic community?
So in terms of the business side, I find that for me, the most valuable way I can use my resources is actually to work with young entrepreneurs, kind of in a sort of mentoring role. It's nice, you can write a check and, wish them good luck, but I think that often what's really useful is sharing the experiences, for better or for worse, starting companies, being in Silicon Valley, networking, technology choices, and so on. So I see it really at the one-to-one level, and these kind of meetings like this are really dangerous because you go away with lots of new business cards and people who are happy to want to schmooze about what they might do.
Great. So I know you served as as CEO of a nonprofit organization called Smart Valley for 3 years back in the 90s, and I have the sense that affected your views on philanthropic giving. So you want to share how that happened?
Yeah, I'll be happy to, and I'd say this is a bit of a warning to you, Danny. So prior to that, I had been involved in a variety of philanthropies, combination of financial contributions, sitting on committees, sitting on boards, participating in activities. But then in the 90s, I became the actual executive director, president, whatever, CEO of a nonprofit called Smart Valley. And I was sure, and I think it's true, maybe we'll talk about this later, that my business experience, would be very valuable in managing this nonprofit. But I found out how much easier it is to run a business. In a business, you have a bottom line. You may complain about the shareholders and what they look at and so on, but the reality is, at the end of the day, you have a P&L, you have a balance sheet, you have products, and kind of people get what your goals are and what your objectives are. When you're running a nonprofit, whether it's as the CEO or being on the staff of the nonprofit, you're being pulled in 20 different ways or 50 different ways. All your constituents have a different idea about what your priority should be. This one says, oh, it's about, senior housing. No, it's about the arts in the community. No, it's about, green space or whatever it may be within your sector. And so I came away with a feeling that somehow being the head of a nonprofit, was something like being a mayor. You have all these different constituencies, all these different people, and you don't have the comfortable thing of going back and saying, look, I made 12 cents per share this quarter. What a hero I am.
That's great. So I take the warning. I get it. No, I'm scared. At least I know you will fall in line and you won't make trouble and throw disparate views in my direction. Or maybe we'll just take our organization to the for-profit world, and then we can measure,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
That could happen.
We could talk about that.
So what are the issues in the Jewish community right now, including obviously Israel, part of the Jewish community, that are most important for you and that you're paying attention to?
It's really tough. I mean, I think that there are things that particularly my wife and I are very involved in that are important to us. I think it starts off actually curiously in kind of old-fashioned view of the importance of community and institutions that support it. I know a lot of people, and I certainly went through this phase as entrepreneurs, feel that they need to express their creativity and create all kinds of new organizations and new services, which certainly is good. But in doing that, I think we still need the traditional ones. So we're very involved, for example, in the Jewish Community Center. And that's an example of something which I think got redefined in our community as a welcoming place, for instance, not for Jews, and by that we include Israelis, which is quite unusual to have the level of involvement and integration in a community setting. So that's an example of something that's quite important to us. The other aspect that we're very involved with is education, and that spans the whole spectrum from supporting Jewish education at the school level, preschool through middle school, supporting Jewish high schools, which are incredibly successful. No one imagined that would happen, and I think have turned a profit, and in the sense of being gotten to critical mass. And then lastly, very involved in universities. Carol and I are both involved on the board of governors in Israel of the Ben-Gurion University, as well as working with the American Associates of Ben-Gurion University to help strengthen the education system and see that they're really on the forefront, producing the next generation of whether it's scientists and entrepreneurs and poets.
Thanks. So you've mentioned now a couple of times the dilemmas entrepreneurs face and sometimes the challenges they face in connecting with nonprofits and supporting them successfully. So one of your points of guidance, because I think that some of the people in this room either are in that position or will be in that position, one of your points of guidance is remember that it doesn't always have to be new. Do you have other ideas for entrepreneurs transitioning into nonprofit board members and chairs?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the couple things I would say which are the contradiction to the lessons you learn in business school about being an entrepreneur. So probably my biggest bugaboo is it's probably a good lesson to learn in business school to have, focus, try and do one thing really well. And I think that lesson doesn't apply in the world of philanthropy and community involvement. I think there you can say, look, this is my most important thing. My number one priority is, so for example, I'm very involved in the Arthritis Foundation, but that's not the end of the story. Maybe that's, whatever. Can't quantify it. 60% of my engagement. But then there's this university, so that's another 20%. And there's this thing, and then we support our synagogue. And I believe that people need to have a very diverse mix, like we talk about an economic portfolio. You're going to make your investments, and people talk about philanthropy as being an investment of your riches, of your time, of your energy, of your attention, and that needs to be in a portfolio with something number one and something number 20. But it really bugs the hell out of me when people say, no, all I ever support is X. X is wonderful, but what do you mean? You're such a narrow-minded person? You can only think about one thing? I don't get it.
Great, thank you. So I do have a few more questions, but I also realize that time is short and there may be some here. So so he's going to ask the first one, it looks like. No, you're asking them to ask the first one. So if there are questions here, please let us know, otherwise I'll keep rolling. So I know that you're aware of the Jewish Community Federation's work in Israel. You recently had a conversation about it. Do you have a perspective on the right way for American Jewry to engage in philanthropy in Israel?
Well, I guess, in line with what I just said, I don't think there's one door. I think people will become involved in various ways. Uh, I think that the old, what I call the old-fashioned view of the foundation and of the federation, excuse me, and of UJA, the Sochnut, of saying, trust us, just give us your money, and we'll, in the best of our ability, invest it and distribute it, is not the way that people are motivated to become involved now. They really want to have more understanding of what are the activities, what are the projects, what are the opportunities to become involved, and so on. So I think that more direct involvement is really important. And we've had a conversation about this and how this can be done still within the context of federated giving, but also in educating the community and giving people opportunities to learn about it. At the end of the day, as long as the needs are addressed, the vehicle is not ultimately what matters, I think.
Yeah, and I know that one of the principles that's important to you, and certainly important to Carol, your wife, is that Israelis take part as well with Jews in the U.S. in philanthropy. And there's nothing that we do as a federation that doesn't involve Israeli philanthropy as well. And it's for exactly the reason you mentioned when we invest in, for example, RavTech, which trains ultra-Orthodox in skills that enable them to enter the economy, or invest in other projects that we're involved in. We bring people to them so they can feel and touch those projects.
Yeah, so I think seeing that, I mean, the Israeli society has changed, over the years. Certainly, I've been engaged. First visited Israel, let's say 50 years ago, a little bit more than that. And it's been, radically different in terms of the economic opportunities, the wealth that's available, and in fact, the Israelis, have become more engaged and very much more involved in philanthropy. Obviously, the things like the way the tax codes work and so on, it's not the same as the USA. The USA has a tax code, and as far as I can tell, all the candidates actually don't want to get rid of the complete credit for philanthropic giving, at least up to ridiculously high levels. So that's the good news. The other thing, I want to go back a little bit to sort of the question of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs also not only kind of want to think of one activity to become involved with, but they're very involved with their work, and that's a good thing. But I think, again, my message to them is to get involved. They may often, all their money is in their startup, and they haven't yet reached any kind of liquidity, so they're not necessarily wealthy. But become involved. Go on a walk. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. Go on a phone-a-thon. Come one evening a year. To make phone calls to people to get them involved, to get involved with an activity, or use your skills. Get on a committee of a nonprofit that needs some technological advice, perhaps, or marketing skills. Direction on their website. It doesn't mean necessarily doing it even, but someone who's started a tech company and is familiar with, social networking, for example, all those kinds of things that are important to make a startup successful, and the kinds of technologies that IT systems should be adopting, in cloud computing and mobile access and so on, are equally, if not more important, to a nonprofit. Nonprofits, in my view, shouldn't be second-class citizens that they're using, hand-me-down computers, running DOS or something. I'm glad you all know what that is. So that's another way, people can get involved and use their skills and take a break, from the grind of their startup.
And just to be clear, is that an example you lived, or is that an example, or is that something you learned after you?
No, I think I did. I think I look back, my career and my involvement, Carol's involvement in philanthropy, got started before I had any wealth. I mean, I was not born with a silver spoon, and we particularly got involved. Unfortunately, we had a daughter who was very ill, was taken care of at the Stanford Children's Hospital, and they knew how to engage us in trying to help them just as community members, not as medical professionals or not as big donors. But if we can if we could locate people and help, that was valuable. When I started my company, Network General, we had no outside capital. It was capital from my back pocket and my partners, a small amount. And I'd realized at that point that company cultures get started on day one. And I felt it was very important to think about these things and set a path for the company that would last for decades. So we decided I decided for me and my partner that we would start a community giving program. And this is in 1986 when we got started. And I researched how much companies like in those days IBM and HP and so on were sort of the big companies. And they were giving, tens of millions of dollars, $100 million a year. But then I did the math. I divided it by the number of employees they had. Okay, and this came out to like $25 or $50 per employee per year. So I said, well, $25 or $50, what if we give $1,000 per employee? And that'll be our starting point. Every employee in this company will help decide where $8,000 go per employee. And we'll see, at some point, obviously that may not continue forever, but we're going to start it. My partner agreed. He didn't fight the concept, even though it was our own capital, no one else's capital. But that also allowed us to do it. I think, honestly, if that was venture capital money, they would have had a new CEO in there. So we could do it. And we had our first employee that year. There were 3 of us. That was the corporate giving committee. And the good news is we kept it up until we had 500 employees or something like that. We did it. And the message was I'm not trying to say that, we were giving out that much money philanthropically. But let me tell you, it really helped select the individuals who wanted to work in our company. This was meaningful to them, okay? And it was something that they were very proud of and that they would always speak of when they tried to attract someone else to join the company in a job interview or something like that. So it was good. I thought it was good business sense, good investment, okay? But that was this is still, in absolute terms, this is not big money, but it was definitely feel good, and the employees felt good, and they got involved in, as I said, walks, bicycle rides, that stuff.
Wow, thank you for sharing that experience and the fact that your ultimate decision on how to do it was so data-driven and compared against the other companies. When I founded a toy company, it was in the middle of the first .com boom. And we didn't lose anybody to those companies because our people had a lot of psychic ownership. Maybe the value of the ownership wasn't so great, but it was psychic, and that's exactly what you did for them. So I'm going to scan the audience once more for a question. Otherwise, we'll wrap it here. Harry, thank you so much, not just for this, but for everything you've done for all these years. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Danny.